Hello and welcome to Scarves Around the Funnel, episode 369, the podcast dedicated to Heart of Midlothian Football Club, home of the now two-time Scottish Premiership Manager of the Month this season, Derek McInnes. Compared with recent episodes featuring Jim Jeffries, Stefan Adam and Gilles Rousset, this one won't last as long, I think. Alongside me as usual, my trusty sidekick, Mr. Scott McIntosh. Did you enjoy a trip down memory lane last week with a little bit of Gallic flair and our French friends?
Yeah, it was really good, and I really liked the opening to it as well when they were covering their time in France before coming
Hmm.
over and playing for Hearts. So, yeah, that was really good. There were some bits of information there that I'd never heard them being sort of asked and talking about before. I just want to clear something up. People might see a key in this door over here, and it's maybe something that people are going to start noticing every week now. There's nothing Fritzl-esque about this. I've just got Derek McInnes locked away until Rangers announce their manager. Okay, so
Very
if anyone
good.
asks, I put a comment in the comment section, then it's fine. Nothing to worry about. I'll let him out on Saturday, but he has to stay in there until till Rangers announce that Muscat's getting the job.
Are you convinced that's going to happen before
I'm
Saturday? Is
not
it going to be
convinced
this?
that's going to happen. I'd be really annoyed if it did because I think that would be a decent appointment. But I think if they had to wait for him to come in and they had to get McCann as the interim, I think they would lose a lot of further ground on teams above them during that time. So I would have really loved Gerrard to have got the job. I was really hoping they were going to go down that route. And if he hadn't got it, I would have quite liked to have seen them go for Danny Roll. But yeah, if they get Muscat in, that's probably one of the better candidates that was out there. But again, nothing's been signed off yet. So although there's been a lot of strong rumours going about this afternoon, the same was being said about Steven Gerrard towards the end of last week. So it could be a case of they've not had a full conversation with him yet about the structure of the club because that seems to be the where the sticking points came with Gerrard, in terms of him getting so far down the line and then decided not to go for it.
No wonder bookies are rich. The amount of money that's been placed on next manager markets over the years, because everybody thinks they know something, and then the price comes crashing down, and then it's not that person, so they move on to the next one. Hopefully, we're not talking about the next Hearts manager anytime soon. And the fact that we're on YouTube now means we have to explain everything that's on in the background of our pictures because most of our listeners still tune in to the audio version. So it was a bit like last week when Steph's partner came into shot and started snogging him, and we had to explain for those who weren't watching what exactly was going on, along with Gilles' kids coming home from school. But you know what? That's what makes it. This is what it's all about, and we're delighted to be on YouTube now as well, and as well via audio. This week we will preview the trip to Kilmarnock this weekend. Your homework, and thank you to everyone who got in touch. The the time you left early, or the goals that you've missed over the years supporting Hearts, but more importantly, why? And also, we'll look back at Derek McInnes' comments after winning the Scottish Premiership Manager of the Month award for the second month running. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest, Hepburn, and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solution since the 1950s. Okay, Scottish Premiership Player of the Month is Lawrence Shankland. Scottish Premiership Goal of the Month is Alexandros Kizeridis. And now, for the second month in a row, the Scottish Premiership Top Manager for September is Derek McInnes. There's no doubt that it had to be him. They just structured when it was actually announced to maximize publicity for the sponsors. And it comes about at a time whereby today, this is Tuesday, we're recording, he was doing the rounds, doing the interviews of those who were congratulating him from various media outlets, and every single one of them took the opportunity to say, aha, Rangers don't have a manager, and you've been linked. So here's the quote. I don't think we can actually play the soundbite because we don't have any money, so we can't afford it. So I don't want to do that. He said, my job here is firmly with Hearts. I've wanted to be here for a long time. I'm really enjoying my work. We feel we've started something and we want to follow up a strong start to the season, maintain it, and see where it takes us. I firmly believe we can be successful here. Now, as a Hearts supporter, I'm perfectly fine with this. I've got no issues. I don't think he's going anywhere. If this had been a few years ago, I mean, Rangers is a massive draw for anybody. But not right now, I don't think, Scott. I think it's a basket case, and whoever comes in is going to have more than just on-field issues to deal with. And I would have been really concerned if Derek McInnes had started the season a few years ago, as he has done this year, and then Rangers came calling when they were far more stable behind the scenes. But I'm all right. I'm pretty confident that he'll still be the manager when Rangers appoint their new boss. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, any interview that's held with him just now, I would take everything that he says, I think, at face value. I think he's genuine when he talks about the fact that this has been a job that he's had his eye on for some time,
Hmm.
and Hearts were always going to be a potential route for him at some stage in his managerial career. I don't get too wrapped up in what managers say. I remember a while ago, going back to talking about Steven Gerrard earlier in the show, he got interviewed maybe 2 or 3 weeks prior to leaving Rangers to go to Aston Villa, and that's when there was the
Yes.
famous "Do I look happy?" quote when I think he was being linked with Newcastle at that stage. So look, we know that things can change really quickly, and we know that Derek McInnes has a previous connection to Rangers, but I think it's fair to say as well, and this is not just about Derek McInnes, this would be about any manager who's contracted to another club just now, going into a club at this point of the season where they've already got their squad in place and you can't do anything until January at the earliest. This tends to be a time where normally it's out of contract managers that come in to take the job on. Seldom do you see managers running away from an environment where they're quite happy anyway and having to take something. I mean, there's an example Ruben Amorim, but even that one, he was very insistent. He wanted the Man United job the following summer, but he was kind of told that if he didn't take it at that stage, then he wouldn't get offered it again. So I think most managers, not just Derek McInnes in this situation, would probably choose to stay at Hearts because it's a stable job. He knows that he's backed. And there is money there as well, albeit
Hmm.
relatively to Rangers. It's not the same amount of money. There is money to make us a competitive side, which was shown already at the start of the season. So I'm quite comfortable with it all. I'm also comfortable with the fact that, like our players, if we have managers who leave the club to go on to potentially bigger and better things, that's normally a sign that the club are doing something right on the park just now. So if that's a byproduct of that, it's something we'll have to accept in the same way that we do players maybe coming and going and maybe only staying for a good time rather than a long time.
And he's turned down Rangers before.
Yeah, and I think, well, I think he was not overly impressed with the structure of the club at that time. Again, I think that would be another sticking point for him. I don't know if nobody really knows how long Kevin Felwell's going to stay in his position or Patrick
Mm.
Stewart at this stage. So I think any manager going into that job just now would be asking serious questions about what the structure's like just now and whether that may actually change in the next 3 to 4 months, because I think there'll be further changes at Rangers over the next 12 months, not just at managerial level.
I said it on Scars Around the Funnel over the past few months. I've spoken to a couple of people that know Derek McInnes very well, and the Hearts job is something, and he said it, and I'm glad that he said it. I think we said it first back in May. This is a job he's had his eye on for quite some time, and this is a job that he feels he's got a right chance of doing well in, with the right backing, with the right structure of the football club. And that can take Hearts to the next level. Where it takes Derek McInnes, who knows if he's the next Scotland manager down the line. But right now, I don't think he'll be the next Rangers manager, because I think you're spot on. You can take him at face value for this. And look, it might come back to bite us on the bum. I don't think it will, but if it does, we'll deal with that. But when he says what he says is he's wanted this job for a while. He feels that he can do a job here and make this club successful, then that's where we are. And no doubt that he deserves a Manager of the Month award times two. I haven't checked. I don't recall the last time that we had a clean sweep of the awards. I'm not sure there's always been a goal of the month announced like this. I'm sure in the past we've had a player and a manager both in the same month get the awards, but I just think it's fantastic. I know we've had an international break, but we're sitting here with a manager of the month in Derek McInnes, a player of the month in Lauren Shankland, and young Kaiseridis with the goal of the month. That's not too bad.
No, no, definitely not. And again, I think we've touched on this a few times since the start of the season. Just embrace it, embrace the positive energy. I'm counting down the days to go into Kilmarnock. I'm counting down the days till we play Celtic and St Mirren later on in the month. It's something to look forward to now. You're looking forward to the next game. You're not having concerns about trying to work out what the team's going to be on Saturday, but you're actually thinking, oh, I wonder if, player X or player Y will come back for an injury. I wonder if he'll maybe make a little tweak and bring in another player that's maybe not had as many minutes. So it's all really exciting just now. And again, none of us can predict what's going to happen in the short or long term. But why worry about that just now? Just enjoy it game to game. It's a funny season this season, and Derek McInnes touched on this in his interview earlier today about teams just can't string two wins together,
Mhm.
uh, and that's why he's had the Manager of the Month award again. We had two games in September and we won them both, and nobody else could say that for the Scottish Premier. So it was a pretty easy choice, even if you're just looking at it from a black and white sort of lens like that. But I think this is a real strange season. We've given ourselves a really good opportunity of something to build on, and I think the fans should just enjoy that.
Only Hearts with one, Aberdeen with one, and Celtic with two have drawn fewer games than everybody else this season. Killie four, Dundee United three, St Mirren three, Motherwell and Hibs and Rangers five,
Mm.
Livingston, Falkirk, and Dundee three. And that means, with just 1 point instead of the three being awarded, we go into the Kilmarnock game on 19 points, Celtic on 17 points, a 7 point gap to Kilmarnock in third on 10, Dundee United and St Mirren on 9, Motherwell, Hibernian, and Rangers on 8. Has this break for the international games come at a good time or a bad time for Hearts, Scott?
I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Look, you could argue that it would be quite good to come back and build on momentum, and I think we said that after the international break off the back of the Rangers game. But then we came back and we done well against Falkirk, and then followed that up with another, albeit tight, last-minute winner against Hibs. I think there'll still be a feel-good factor from that. I think you've also had players going away on international duty and doing well as well, whether it be Cammy Devlin even just getting recalled into the Australia squad after spending a year or two away. You've had Kabori hitting a hat trick for Burkina Faso. You've had James Wilson getting a hat trick for the Scotland under 21s. So you've got that external positive vibe coming in as well this week when people return back to training. And then you've also got the return to training of players like Borchevink and Aju and Frankie Kent and that as well.
Mhm.
So although we haven't had that game that you would just love just now, and you would love there to be not as many international breaks as there has been, I don't think that should hinder things too much.
Kabori scoring a hat trick, coming off the bench for Ouattara, who's a multi-million pound star down in the English Premier League, and getting a hat trick that's taken them, like Scotland, pretty close to, I think it's a guaranteed playoff and potential qualifying for the World Cup. These are the types of needles in haystacks that Jamestown Analytics can find. And look, we still don't know if he's at Hearts level as far as playing week in, week out. He might end up being a squad player who's good coming off the bench. But there's been times this season he's not even made the bench. But if you're Derek McInnes and you've got to choose from James Wilson, who's flying, albeit it was against Minnows that he got his hat trick for Scotland under 21s, you've still got to score that. You've got players saying to the gaffer, hey, look, I'm in form here, but it's up to them when they get the chance to take that opportunity. That can only benefit Hearts.
Yeah, and I think these players will still have to be quite patient because I think
Yep.
you've got, I'd say Wilson and Kabori are probably fourth and fifth in the pecking order just now in terms of central forwards. Elton Kabangu's done really well against Rangers and Hibs recently, making cameo appearances. So for me, he is probably still that initial first choice that you would go for if you're looking to freshen things up front the last 20, 30 minutes of a game. So it's good. It's good that we've got these options. It's good problems for a manager to have. But naturally there is a challenge there for Derek McInnes to try and keep that positivity going, because I would imagine James Wilson and Kabori, the first thing they would want to do after doing so well in international duty would to get an opportunity to do it at club level as well. And if they maybe go another 2 or 3 weeks without getting many minutes, that's going to be a challenge for Derek McInnes to rise to and try and make sure that he sorts that out and keeps them, you know, keeps them ticking over in training, whether that's through bounce games or that, and just, keeps them on their toes so that when they do inevitably get that chance, because they will, injuries and suspensions will come along. Gordon Shanklin tends to hit double figures for bookings. So, he will hit a suspension at some stage. And Claudio Braga's somebody that we can utilise out in wide positions as well. So I'm sure they will get a position or sorry, a chance at some stage. It's just making sure that they're in the right mindset when that eventually comes along, because it could still be a little while down the road.
You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Kilmarnock versus Hearts this weekend as domestic action returns to Scottish football. Not sure we should try and predict the actual lineup, but let's take a look, Scott, at some of the areas that might be giving Derek McInnes some opportunities to perhaps freshen things up. We've had the same team against Rangers. We've had the same team that played against Falkirk, and we've had the same team that played against Hibs. This is different. This is away from home at Kilmarnock. It's on a plastic pitch. What are you thinking in certain positions that Derek McInnes might decide to maybe freshen up?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of positions we could maybe freshen up. I think in terms of, you could go with another 4-2-4 or 4-4-2, because I think Kilmarnock will have a similar setup to Hibs. Kilmarnock are currently 12th in the table for possession stats, passes, and accurate passes. So they're not a team that really are interested in seeing much of the ball. What they will try and do is force the issue on the other team to sort of have the majority of the possession and then try and sort of press against them and then hit them in the transition. So I think we will see a lot of the ball on Saturday. I think what we need to see different to the Hibs game is probably some link between midfield to attack, because I felt like there was a huge gap between what Benny and Cammy were trying to do, and then we sort of Shanklin and Braga playing as that front pairing. So I don't know whether
Mhm.
it's a game that's more adept maybe for a 4-2-3-1 and just having somebody playing in that hole. I know that it looked as if they were asking Lauren Shanklin to come a bit deeper, but we don't really want to get back into that territory that we
No.
had with him last season. I think you really do need him to be playing a bit further up top. So there's an option there. You could either, you could bring in maybe Blair Spittle and play Blair Spittle in a sort of 10 position, and you could have Braga moving out into the left and Kizarides going over to the right. You could drop one of the players. You could bring in Kurjota. Kurjota's obviously done well, coming on in that last game as well. And then in midfield, Cammy Devlin's not going to get back till late on with regards to his international duty. So there probably has to be a decision made on whether he will be fully recovered from that to play on Saturday. But with Bolshevik coming back in, there's an option to maybe move McAtee into a central position. And I think McAtee's got more of a drive from that central area than say
Mm.
Cammy or Benny have. So yeah, I think there's a few options here. You don't want to make too many changes to a winning team, but it was just something I noticed against Hibs, because Hibs were pressing on our fullbacks. We were having to sort of go long, and there was a lot of second balls that could have been contested in that central area, and it wasn't really happening because of how deep our two central midfielders were. So that's something I'd maybe quite like to see a bit different, because I do think it will be another sort of direct match. I'm not expecting
Yeah.
a lot of football to be played, just in terms of how Kilmarnock will want us to play the game. So yeah, I'm expecting it to be another tight one, and the difference maker could just be getting somebody into that central position playing off the forwards.
I think two of our next three games, in fact, our next two away games could be very similar. Away to Kilmarnock and away to St Mirren. That brings in the chance for you and I to talk about the potential of going to a back three, because that might be an opportunity, because Kilmarnock play the back three. They had Kilty, Polworth, and Watson in the middle of the park in their last game, a 2-0 win over St Mirren. When you've had a win over Rangers at Ibrox using a back four, when you've had that win over Falkirk at Tynecastle using a back four, and that win against Hibs, albeit Hearts didn't play great and scored late on to get the win. Yes, it's an option, but are you holding yourself up for potential criticism if you change a or change a back four to a back three, having won three straight games with a back four, if it doesn't work at Kilmarnock?
I always think the bulky criticism for football fans comes not just off the back of a result, but when a manager hasn't been able to articulate why he's made those changes. And I
Mm,
think, to be fair to Derek McInnes, and again, it's maybe been easier for him because he's had to have these conversations off the back of getting positive results. But if you think about the starting 11 against Livingston or against Motherwell or St Mirren, for example, I felt confident that when he came out and he explained himself and why he made those changes, I think most fans were able to understand it. And whether you agree or not could still be another issue. But I think he does come out and explain quite clearly what his thinking was. Now, again, some fans won't like that because some fans don't like to hear about managers thinking about the opposition. They just think that if you're a Hearts or a Hibs or an Aberdeen, you shouldn't have to worry about what you're doing in a fixture against a Kilmarnock or a Motherwell or a Dundee. But I do think you do have to watch out for how they're going to try and neutralise our system and try and think of a different way to play against them. That's why I'm thinking, do you maybe just drop in a number 10 in there? Somebody that can
mhm.
pick up on balls, but also receive the ball for the two central midfielders. And give us another option because it was something that just you watch back the Hibs game on the replays, and you do realise there was a lot of opportunities for us to pick up space there. We didn't quite take it. Again, another thing they'll need to work on is maybe getting the ball in the box a bit quicker. That was something where we got into wide areas on a number of occasions against Hibs, but we didn't really get the ball in the box. And again, was that because Shanklin was playing that deeper role? So, yeah, I think there's a few things they could work on and a couple of changes to be made, but it wouldn't surprise me if he went in with the same 11 just because it's worked well for him over the last couple of matches.
If we go with a back four, who would be your two fullbacks?
I'd probably go with Milne and Bosch, I think. I just think Parry Milne gives you a little bit more going forward, especially if you had some, let's say, for example, if they decided to put Braga out wide left or kept Kazarides in that wide left position, they're more likely to go and play inverted and want to cut inside. So having somebody overlapping them down the left is vital. And I think it's not that Stephen Kingsley can't do it. I just think he doesn't do it to the same degree as he would have done 4 or 5 seasons ago. I think Harry Milne gives you that option. So I would go with Milne. I think Boschevink, it's not so much that I'm eager to see Boschevink play. I'm just eager to get McAtee in his proper position because I think he can offer us something that some of our other central midfielders can't just now.
So if you're playing Milne back at left back, who's playing on the right hand side, whether it's a 4-4-2 or, as you've suggested, a 4-2-3-1?
Yeah, I think if you're going with the 4-2-3-1, I think you go with Kazadidas playing there, with Braga playing on the left side. That's how I would probably go with it. I think if he decides that he wants to keep the 4-2-4 and he doesn't want to make too many changes, you could keep the other three attacking options as they were against Hibs, and then you just maybe put Carjota in there on the right, or you bring in Blair Spittle on the left and put Kazididis over to the right. So there's options there, depending on what he wants to do.
As far as Kilmarnock is concerned, we spoke about their midfield trio that started against St Mirren. What do you make of them overall as one of the better teams in the league? They're third right now. They've got Dees, Mayo, and Stanger at the back. That was their back three against St Mirren. Bruce Anderson and Dackers up front. What do you think of them as far as other Premiership opposition is concerned?
I think they're one of the teams that can match us in terms of that physicality and winning the battle. So I think there will be a lot of that on Saturday. There'll be a lot of second balls that need to be contested all over the park. I think bringing Bruce Anderson back into the team's been a bit of a masterstroke for them. I think with Dackers and Daniels, they'd started with him up top for the League Cup games and then the opening to the league season, but I think they're a bit too similar. They're both a bit too sort of cumbersome, and there wasn't really a lot of movement up there. And although they were maybe causing problems for teams when Kilmarnock were going direct, there wasn't really a lot of legs up there. So I think bringing Bruce Anderson in who's a decent player at this level. I think that's been a good move for them. Watson obviously gives them a lot coming from midfield. I'm sure that's something that Derek McInnes will be well aware of. And then the back, they've got really sort of strong back three, and their keeper's pretty decent as well. Down the flanks, they've got willing players down the flanks, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of quality there. From Thompson and that, I don't think they've got a lot of quality coming down those areas compared to where they were when they had the likes of sort of Armstrong and God, name escapes me, the left-sided guy that used to play for Hibs and Aberdeen. Can't remember. But anyway, they used to have the options going down the flanks there. They used to have a bit better delivery coming in for those areas. So I'm not as worried about them coming down there. And I do think if we go with two wide men, we can pin back their wing backs anyway, similar to what we've done with Hibs a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I think the main worry is going to be second balls, contesting second balls, and then again for set plays, just making sure we're defending well from ours and maybe making the most of the opportunities when we get them as well.
Yeah, it was a big help to you there. Apologies for that.
Yeah,
David
I can't even
Watson.
remember that guy's name now. It's going to annoy me. Kennedy, Matty Kennedy,
There,
that was
there you go. There you go.
it.
David Watson, Scotland under 21 captain, scored last time out for Kilmarnock, out of contract at the end of the season. Thinking back, there were times that McInnes didn't play him, there were times he did play him. Is he someone that you think might be of interest to Hearts in the next summer?
It's a bit of a strange one. He's probably got a bit of a similar sort of profile to Mulligan. And Mulligan was somebody a few months ago I would have quite liked Hearts to have had a look at. I don't know whether the Mulligan issue is the fact that they're maybe not quite decided on whether he's a right wing back or a central midfielder yet. He seems to get
He's not a
played
right
in
wing
the two
back.
positions.
Yeah.
Uh, but with Watson, I've been impressed with Watson, and I'll be completely honest, I was a bit perplexed as to why he didn't get more minutes under McInnes at times. He tended to come
Hmm.
off the bench quite a bit. And I don't know if that was just, you know, not having the balance right with the rest of the midfield or trying to maybe protect them and not sort of burn them out. But he's done well this season again. He's really started well. He's chipping in with goals. I'm not overly concerned about him because I think we've got a good spine to our team. You know, if you think of the centre halves and the central midfielders and that, I do think we've got enough in there to make sure that we can negate that threat. I just think it's an overall issue with Kilmarnock as a team. A bit the same when Kettlewell had Motherwell. It's what he can do with the sum of his parts. You know, it's I think they will be physical, they'll be aggressive, and I think that's something we'll need to make sure we match before we can go on to win the actual football game. It's just making sure that opening 10-15, we're winning our second balls and we're managing to get a foot on the ball and keep it. But again, I'm expecting us to have a lot of the ball just based on how Kilmarnock have approached their other games so far this season. But they've been
Anytime
efficient as
you,
well. If
yeah, they
you
have. They have.
in terms of chances created and taken, they've been very efficient in front of goal. They're
Hmm.
not creating a lot, but when they do, they've been quite efficient in front of goal. So again, that's something we'll need to keep an eye out in terms of giving them those opportunities.
Yeah, I don't think there's much in this game on Saturday, as has been the case at Livingston, at Dundee United, and against Hibs when Hearts scored their late winners in each of those. When you link someone or when someone else arrives at a football club, someone else drops down the pecking order. So if we're talking about David Watson coming in, we've still got in that central area. I mean, Ocean McEntee's best position is in there, but Thomas Magnuson is someone I've read a few people saying, looking forward to maybe seeing him getting a start. And it was something that Derek McInnes spoke about over the past 24 hours. Games are coming thick and fast. It's been like feast or famine to begin the season. And it's actually not been a bad thing that Hearts haven't had too many games in September because, of course, we have Aju still to come back as well. The likelihood is that he might get a place on the bench at Kilmarnock at best. He's not going to start that game, according to Derek McInnes. They've got their eye on the Celtic game for him to kind of return to the starting 11 if everything goes fine. But for someone like Thomas Magnuson, it's an opportunity now when he gets his chance, he's got to take it over the next few games. Where's his best position? Where do you see him, and who would you like to see him play alongside?
I think he's got a similar sort of profile to McAtee. So I think in terms of playing that central position, but being a bit more of a box to box midfielder, being a bit more willing in terms of getting forward and supporting the front players. I actually thought that St Mirren game, I know it was a difficult half for him. He got booked really early on, which really affected his game in terms of being able to support Cammy Devlin as a defensive force. But I actually thought he was very tidy on the ball. I thought there was an element to his game where I thought, yep, he can certainly offer us something. So yeah, I honestly think, I think he will get an opportunity. I don't know when it'll happen though, because you look at the next upcoming games and you could give a reason for why he wouldn't start them. Kilmarnock away, is that the right one? Celtic at home, St Mirren away. Then you think Dundee at home. Would that be the sort of game that would maybe suit him, given where Dundee are just now? So yeah, I think he will eventually get a chance, and Kurjota will as well. It'll be a bit of a fixture pile up over the winter period as it normally is. So I'm expecting those players to come in and hopefully stake a claim for further opportunities. But I have been impressed with what I've seen of them so far. It's just that you're asking them to then get played ahead of Benny, who's still one of our most vital players, and Cammy, who's had a really good start to the season. And then you've got McAtee as well, who's
Mhm.
played really well from that sort of alien position out in the fullback area. So, like most people, it's not a case that Magnuson's doing a lot wrong. It's just that he's going to have to be just patient because people in front of him are still doing their job. And as long as we're still, in those top two places, he can't really argue that point. The only time that players in the sort of periphery will be able to sort of maybe, you know, have a bit of a gripe about where they are in the first team squad will come when we maybe get a bit of a drop in form, and it'll be interesting to see what Derek McInnes then does in that scenario.
And you look at this game as well on Saturday, and regardless what happens, Hearts prior to kickoff have a chance to go 12 points clear of Kilmarnock with a win. Now, a draw keeps them 9 clear, and there's a chasing pack that's breathing down Killy's neck. But this is an opportunity in this part of the season. What are we now? Mid-October, to put a little bit of distance between ourselves and some of the chasing pack.
Yeah, and again, when you consider just how hard it's been so far this season for
Hmm.
teams to build up a head of steam, Kilmarnock are one of the rare examples of a team actually getting a couple of results on the spin with their results against Dundee United and St Mirren. But prior to that, it was, all draws and then the late unfortunate defeat at home to Celtic. So, yeah, I think if you could pull away from a few teams at this stage of the season, given how the makeup of the league looks just now, you would like to think that that's a lead that you could either maintain or sort of lengthen, even if you were going to hit a bit of a dip. Because I think from what you've seen from this Hearts team so far, it doesn't look like a team that will go on a losing run. There
Mm.
will be bumps on the road this season, but I think the character of the team and the setup of the team, you can see enough there to go, that team ain't going to lose 3 or 4 games in a row this season. I just can't see it. They'll hit a bump, of course they'll hit a bump, but I think it's a bump they'll come back from pretty quickly. I just can't see us being a team that, if you think back to a couple of years ago when we were so far in front of Aberdeen and, we had a good run and then we had an equally bad run off the back of it. I just don't see that, those two extremes with this current squad.
Scarves around the funnel, deal or no deal. I just come up with that to offer Scott McIntosh what is in the box. And I'm going to show you what's in the box, and I'm going to ask if you want to take it or you wish to gamble. So we have 2 away games with Celtic at home sandwiched in the middle. We're at Kilmarnock and we're at St Mirren with that Celtic game. In the box, for these next 3 games, it's a take it or leave it deal. You can take it right now and run. You don't have to play the 3 games. Or you can go, nope, Mr. Banker, I am going to want to play the 3 games because I think we can do better. The offer from the Scarves Around the Funnel Banker for these next 3 games is 5 points. Mr. McIntosh.
No, I wouldn't deal for that. I think there's more points here on the table that can be played for. Look, don't get me wrong. Kilmarnock and St Mirren. St Mirren especially, I think, is a very tough fixture, given how well equipped they are to play against the bigger sides. That is their that's St Mirren's bread and butter, is those games against the rest of the sort of top six teams. That's where they make up a large portion of their points over the season. So I'm not saying any of these games will be easy, but I think there's an opportunity there for us to get 7 or 9 points out of those next three fixtures. I think the Celtic game, didn't get me wrong, in that atmosphere, could some of Celtic's big players get a bit of a rise out of that and sort of come onto a game when they've struggled so far this season? Of course they can. But from what I've seen of Celtic so far this season, they are sleepwalking through this season so far. And yep, they've still got moments of individual quality, but it's there for the taking. These games are there for the taking. And given the form we're in just now, I think there's the opportunity to get more than 5 points here.
What if I told you that the 3 points from the five comes from a victory over Celtic and the draws are the two away games? And given that they have Dundee and Falkirk either side of coming to Tynecastle and they'll probably win that, that would put them on 23 points, but it would put Hearts on 24 points. Would that sway you, or are you still adamant that you're not interested in the offer?
No, I think the makeup of the squad just now and the run they're on, we should be looking to win every game. I'm not saying we should be expecting to win every game, but we should be looking to win every game. We should be going into every game confident that we can get a result against the opposition that we're up against. So, with that being said, I think, when we're in that mindset just now, we should be going for each match and trying to get maximum points.
I like the attitude. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. So, your homework this week, goals that you have not seen because you left early, or you went for a pee, or you went for a pie, or whatever. And it kind of came about because my brother-in-law, Graham Hare, went to the game against Hibernian with my mother, and they were gone before Hearts got the winner. And there have been a few. And we've heard a few stories from Hearts supporters about missing the Graham Weir goal or goals. We've had a couple of emails. This is from James Cant. I missed Mark De Vries scoring the opener against Dundee United at Tannadice in December 2002. Despite both of us growing up near Dundee and my mate being an Arab, we managed to walk in completely the wrong direction. I blame my mate from town and missed kickoff. I've checked, and De Vries scored in the 26th minute of that game. That gives you an idea of how late we were. From Craig Browning. It's a good one. Hi, Mark. You mentioned this on last week's pod, and I wondered if anyone had a list like this of great goals that you'd missed that you'd normally be there for. I got my season ticket in 2001 and went home and away until about 2013. At that stage, I cut back on away games, but still went to the derbies at Easter Road until I didn't have enough loyalty points / couldn't use someone else's account. Funnily enough, they're all against Hibs, except for one. Ryan Stevenson in the League Cup at Easter Road, family holiday in Australia. You're getting no sympathy for that one. Alim Öztürk at Easter Road, clash with the school October holiday, so we were away. Ellis Sims and Stephen Kingsley at Hampden, that clashed with the Easter holiday. Stephen Humphreys against Dundee United. He was away on a winter camp as a scout leader. And Alan Forrest against Hibs, that clashed with him travelling up to the Highlands. So Craig's kind of taken it on a different, slightly different tangent in games that he wished he'd been at and wasn't. Um, Airdrie for me, I'm kind of glad I wasn't at the replay, the Scottish Cup replay after the initial draw. I think it was a midweek in front of
Yeah,
like no
same
more
here.
than
Because I was still a youngster, I think my dad didn't want to take me through midweek. So I only made it for the 0-0 game on the Saturday. But I think I probably saw it on Sky. I'm pretty sure Sky had that one on live, the
think they
penalty
did.
shout loss. But yeah, thankfully I didn't have to go to that one.
Still shudder. Were there games in the past that you missed for whatever reason that you wished that you'd been to?
Yeah, there's a couple, but just thinking back to the homework about the goals that you missed, and
Yeah.
when we were talking about it with Barry last week, I was focusing on a couple of games where I'd maybe missed like a last minute goal, or that time at Ibrox where I missed a early goal at Ibrox for about 4 or 5 years. But there is actually another game, and it's funny. It was when I was watching the pod between yourself and Gilles and Stefan the other day. That game where Stefan Adam scores a hat trick, I missed the first two goals from that game that day. Kilmarnock scored after about 5 minutes, and then Stefan equalised about 5 minutes later. Me and two of my friends, we all had season tickets in the Gorgie Road end, but we're all in separate seats. We decided we wanted to sit together for this game, so there were some seats available round at the school end for this match. So we all decided we'd go round there and would sit behind the goals. But one of my friends was a bit overzealous and decided to run into the Kilmarnock end and start sort of swearing at them and that. So the three of us actually got thrown out. But thankfully, one of the guys actually had a family member who worked the doors. So we managed to get back in through his family member. But by the time I got back in, it was already one each. So yeah, that's my shameful exit from Tynecastle. I have actually been thrown out of Tynecastle, but it only lasted 10 minutes, thankfully. So, yeah,
That's
if Scott
impressive.
Johnston or Darren Manson are listening to this, it'll be interesting to know if they actually remember that game because it's one of the few where I missed some goals at the start of a match rather than from the end.
Alan Fraser said he missed Stephen Humphrey's goal from his own half as he had to leave early for a family meal. And he's one of the fans that says he rarely ever
Hmm.
leaves early. And Alan's mate missed both Graham Weir's goals in the 4-4 and didn't believe us that it finished 4-4. I don't think he'd be the only one who was
No,
incredulous
I
at that
missed those
point.
two. So back then I was still at college and I was working in a local store doing some part-time work. So I was in for a 5 to 10 shift that Saturday night. So Hibs went 4-2 up. I was like, right, I need to get the bus. I need to beat the crowd. So I go in, go on the bus, and of course there wasn't social media. You had mobile phones, but
Hmm.
you didn't have access to apps that would give you live score updates or anything like that. So I had a habit of doing this when I was younger. It was almost to try and stop the sort of tirade abuse that would come your way if Hibs got a result against Hearts. I would kind of try and nip it in the bud by sending a few of my best Hibs mates a text saying, "Well done, you deserved the win," blah 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 blah, and kind of beat them to the punch. So I was already sort of composing this text, and I sent it out to a few people, and a couple of people got back in touch with me by the time I got to the store to start my shift to say, are you off your head? Like, are you taking the piss? And it wasn't until I started getting those texts back from my heavy mates that I found out that actually Graham Weir had got the two goals. So yeah, I missed those two goals that day as well.
This is very reminiscent for those of you watching on YouTube of last week with Stefan Adam, albeit Scott's not in La Reunion in the Indian Ocean, and it was getting darker and darker
And
and darker, and then he eventually went to put his light on, and I could, when you move in a certain light, I could see your face, but the shadows on that key that's locked Derek McInnes downstairs are getting longer and longer. Jason, who's a Claudio Braga enthusiast, says October 2010 against St Mirren. I arrived 3 minutes late, so I missed Rudy Scatchell's first. I decided to leave a few minutes early. As I turned my back to head out the stadium, he scored his hat trick, so I missed two of the three goals. Ali Graham said he did similar at the 2-all game at Ibrox a couple of years ago. He was late, so he missed Hearts going 1-0 up. Then he sat through a typical Hearts in Glasgow performance, caught both Rangers goals, left early, and missed Garang Kuhl's equaliser. See, when you think about these names, and I posted something on the Scarves Around the Funnel Twitter account a couple of weeks ago about Miss These Days with a photo of Mallory Martin. The years that we've been doing this podcast since 2018, and this is what always brings me back to what you've been saying. Make the most of this because you still shudder when Robbie decided to play Garang Kuhl as a central midfielder against Rangers at Tynecastle, the Maori Martin era. I don't know how good it is right now as far as quality of player that we have, but I do know that where we are and the position that we are in right now, there's 11 other teams and supporters of 11 other teams that would love to be in our position. Is it an issue now for Hearts that we have a target on our back?
No, I don't think so because I think regardless of how good our form is during the season, certain teams will view us as a scalp. Again, it's in the same way as Hibs and Aberdeen, it's that sort of next bracket down for the old firm. So when you go away to St Mirren and Motherwell and Kilmarnock and that, they're going to view you as a scalp regardless of where your form is at the time. So I don't think that makes a huge issue. I think a lot of the chat, it's being fueled just now by people outside of the Tynecastle bubble. And again, a lot of it has been manufactured to highlight just how poor Rangers have been, rather than to give Hearts credit. And I think most, level-headed Hearts fans are like us. They're just wanting to enjoy it while it goes on. They're not saying too much on the back of it. A lot of the title chat is coming from external voices. It's not coming from people at Hearts. So I'm not really too worried because I do think Derek McInnes will tell the players to try and keep a level head because we are that early on in the season. Now, don't get me wrong. If you got any February, March time and we were still either a couple of points ahead or a couple of points behind Celtic, then yes, that could be a bigger challenge for the players and the fans to try and, keep a level head and try and not get too worked up over things. But at this stage, I think most people are just enjoying it the same way they did in 18, 19, where people were coming out of Fir Park that day when we won 1-0 and singing We Shall Not Be Moved. It's just fans having a bit of fun. And again, look, people will always bring that up to try and bring you down a couple of notches when you eventually lose a game. That's fine. That's the prerogative of rival fans to do that. And we would do the same, like I'm sure we've done with Aberdeen fans
But
last
you
season
did.
when they eventually go on that run. You bring it up and you have that sort of social media beef with rival fans. It's all good nature the majority of the time. So I think we should enjoy this because we know that there will come a Saturday evening where we do have to take those receipts and we will, we'll lose a match. So why not just enjoy it while it happens and let these other external voices worry about whether we're going to be top in a couple of months or whether we can win the league. Again,
Hmm.
they're only focusing on us just now because it paints a picture on Ibrox and it brings that into focus in terms of how poorly they've started the season and people want to kind of almost use us as a measuring stick to say, well, look, Rangers, this is what's happening because you haven't started the season well and Hearts have. So, yeah, I wouldn't get too worried about it just now. Just enjoy yourself. It's great. We're only a few sleeps away for Saturday. It's a sellout crowd, which is the first time I think we've had that, Kelly, for a while. And one of the group chats, we're sort of talking about that. 0506 with a good crowd, and
Yeah, I
ninety-five,
remember that.
96 with the Scottish Cup crowd when Chuck
I
Berry
remember
scored
that.
late
Did
on.
Walter Kidd
So
not playing? Walter Kidd played in a game that we showed up late. We're like, what the fuck's he playing for? I don't know if that was before the Chuck
that was
Berry
94,
one.
95.
There
Aye.
you go. Tommy
Walter
McLean.
Kidd had to play. I think we got beat that day 3-1.
We did. Yeah, we got
Uh,
beat. I don't know what the score. Yeah, I'm sure you know.
I think it was 3-1 to Killie anyway. But yeah, so it'll be good to take a good crowd through there. And that'll hopefully spur the players on. It's on telly. And yeah, it gives us another chance to show ourselves in a good light as a club in terms of, maintaining this form. And then just taking that positivity into another Saturday.
I remember the Scottish Cup tie. Did you say it was Neil Berry that scored late on
Yes.
in that one? So we were behind the goal. I think I was back row behind the goal, and I felt that stand was literally going up and
Yeah.
down, and you kind of thought, I hope the structure is going to support this, the weight of everybody jumping up and down. But that was kind of one of the memories for Kilmarnock, and it's a strange place to kind of go to at times because it's like, oh, we can't get a result, and then other times you're just like, oh, well, this is a great place because we don't seem to lose here. Of all the times that you've been to Kilmarnock, is it a ground that over the piece you think yeah, good memories outstrip the bad memories.
Yeah, it's not been too bad a venue for us over the last 20, 30 years. I would say at home to Kilmarnock's been the
That's
big
been the issue.
challenge. You know, probably the last sort of 14, 15 years, that's been the fixture that you've not really looked forward to is at home to them rather than away to them. We've had patchy form there. We've had little 3 to 5 game spells where we've done well, and then maybe another 2, 3 games where we've not won. But generally speaking, it's not one of those grounds that you would view as like a bogey ground or a bogey team in an away fixture anyway. It's a bit like, Fir Park. We had great runny form at Fir Park in the 90s, but then we had a
Yeah.
bit of a struggle going into the current century, and then we've sort of picked it up again. So yeah, it's pretty patchy and inconsistent, but not something that you'd look at on your calendar and go, oh, well, that's definitely going to be a really hard match. It's going to be a hard match because Kilmarnock are well coached and they'll scrap for every second ball and there'll be a nuisance for set plays. But as long as we're disciplined, I'm confident we'll get a result.
Thank you for all your messages about late goals and goals you wish you'd seen, but you didn't. Last one from, what was a couple? From Graham. Hearts 4, Hibs 4. Left after the fourth Hibs goal in a strop, got just outside the ground. Heard a muted cheer, thought it was number 5. Got to the Roseburn, turned on the radio, heard it was full time. Incredible scenes, Hearts 4, Hibs 4. I was both ecstatic and raging. And Brian Beaton simply says, snap. You've spoken about enjoyment, where Hearts are right now. And among the many things I enjoyed doing last week with Stefan and Dam and speaking to Gilles Rousset as well was looking back at the title challenge of 97, 98, because it's not really been spoken about too much. And I asked both men when they kind of thought that Hearts were in a title challenge. Was it when Steph scored his hat trick against Kilmarnock in the November? And they said no. It probably was. They might have thought they were in a title challenge kind of February, March, but it was more the result against Motherwell, as Steph was saying. You need to be able to cash it in, and then they dropped points. So at which stage of this season, and look, we can get ahead of ourselves, right? Hearts can't, McInnes and Co can't, but we can. At which stage of the season, if things continue to go well, should enjoyment be replaced by excitement?
Probably the end of January. Not just purely because by then we'll have played everyone home and away, so you've got a good gauge of where you are against your direct opposition and your rivals. But I think also you'll get to see how Celtic and Rangers react to their start of the
Yeah.
season. You'll get to see if the Celtic board decide that they have made a mistake and they want to try and make amends. You'll see if Rangers need to try and carry out some emergency repair on the underwhelming squad building job that they done during the summer. So I think at the end of January, you'll get to see a good gauge of not just where we would be in terms of if we were going in for a title race, but also your direct opposition.
You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Going to end today, as we always do when there's an upcoming game, with predictions. Kilmarnock against Hearts this weekend. Scott McIntosh, what do you think will happen?
I think it'll be a tight game. I think we'll see plenty of the ball, but I think there'll be challenges that will come with that in terms of how Kilmarnock play. And I think like some recent games, I think there'll need to be a bit of patience amongst the fans. I don't think it's a game where we'll come out the traps flying and get an early lead. I think it's something that's going to take a bit of patience and effort to get to, but I'm confident we'll get a 2-1 win on Saturday.
Scorer?
Lauren Shankland.
Okay. Just a reminder to those of you heading to Rugby Park, I probably don't need to, but if there's one person that this benefits, that's enough. It's not a 3 p.m. kickoff. It's a 5:45 p.m. kickoff. And Celtic don't play until Sunday, so if Hearts were to win, not only would they go 12 points clear of Kilmarnock, but on Saturday evening would have a 5-point cushion over Celtic, who head to Dens Park on Sunday. So I'm looking at previous games, recent games at Kilmarnock. The Stephen Kingsley late winner back in May. The 1-0 defeat, Bruce Anderson's penalty and the 0-0. Neither of those three games, that 0-0 was April 2024. Neither of them, sorry, all three of them were kind of bang average games. I don't think we'll get a thriller. I think it's the best bet is probably 1-1 because Killie have drawn five of their games so far. But I'm going to go for Hearts to win by 1-0. I think Claudio Braga will score the only goal, and I think our run of clean sheets with Alexander Schwallow yet to concede will hopefully continue. And as Scott said, we're keeping the receipts. We know we're going to have to kind of answer after we get our first defeat. I don't think it's this weekend. Would you though? Would you take 5 points if the Scarves Around the Funnel banker offered you that for these next three games at Kilmarnock, home to Celtic, and at St Mirren? I'm gonna disagree with Scott, and I'm glad. I love his optimism, but I would take 5 points. It keeps us unbeaten over these next three games. And let's reconvene after the St Mirren game for Scarves Around the Funnel episode, whatever number it is, and find out who was right. Scott, if we get more than 5 points, or myself, if we get less. Thank you for joining us, and feel free to get in touch, as always, at podcast at scarvesaroundthefunnel.co.uk. We're also available on YouTube and Instagram. Feel free to subscribe and like if you do. Thank you for watching or listening. Bye for now.